All right, folks, it's August of 2024. I can't remember my lines. I don't know what day it is. We are still basking in the afterglow of the 48 CFR CMMC rule. If you missed that show, check out the links below. We go line by line, in depth, everything you need to know about it as the follow-up to the 32 CFR rule that came out in December of 2023. A link to our webinar on that is also below. And the one big thing that everyone needs to know about CMMC rolling out into contracts, you don't need CMMC to bid on contracts. You do need CMMC to take award of a contract. So the big question in everybody's mind should be, how long does it take to go from a DoD RFP to award? And I've got some news for everybody. Our friends at GAO have calculated the numbers. And if you think 180 days to close your POAM items, to close your remediate your open findings in your CMMC assessment is not a lot of time, the time it takes to go from RFP to award is faster. It's much faster, and it's getting faster for basically everyone who does DoD contracting work or subcontracting work if you're winning anything less than a $50 million award. How about that? So if CMMC is a condition of award, you cannot wait until the solicitation comes out to get started on the work. You necessarily need to have the cert beforehand, and today we're going to talk about why.
So one of the things that's often overlooked is that everybody just automatically assumes that, this is going to go live. They're going to have CMMC appear on their contracts, and instantaneously they're going to call C3PAO. Hey, we've got CMMC. Okay, thanks for the certificate. Here we go. In all reality, we've explained multiple times, 12 to 18 months. It's going to take you to get ready. It's going to take you some time in the line to get up with your C3PAO and complete the assessment. And if everything's perfect, and if they deem that you are able to proceed with your assessment and the pre-assessment shenanigans, as we've covered in a previous episode, and if you score a perfect 110 on the first pass through, then you're awarded certification, right? That's sounds even longer than the time that it would take to get to an award. But what happens if you have certain things that you can that are identified deficiencies during your assessment? You have a POAM closeout period that is 6 months, right? And so you're saying that the average length of what's acceptable for a POAM to be closed within the CMMC spectrum period, isn't it? And we're talking about some cases where organizations will assume that, hey, we're ready to go. We'll wait till it starts. We'll get our assessment. It'll be perfect. And then everything will be perfect from then on out. And realistically, that could be further from the truth.
How many times have we heard? How many times do we continue to hear? We will get started as soon as it shows up as a requirement for our customer. That is a rational position to take. That is a reasonable thing to say, unless the amount of time that it takes to go from RFP to award is a matter of days or weeks, as it turns out to be for like 85% of the work that DoD awards via contract.
I would say up until last week, that was the case, Jacob. And then 48 CFR comes out, and what is the text in 48 CFR? It essentially points to all the things that we've been pointing at previously, which was, hey, this has already existed. We're just trying to verify it.
Hey, you don't have to take it from us. Let's go through the numbers from GAO, and they'll tell you how much time you have to go from RFP to award. So, GAO reports, one of my favorite things to indulge in for my weekend reading. Back in March of 2024, GAO releases a report analyzing the time from DoD solicitation to contract award, which is referred to as Procurement Administrative Lead Time, or PALT. I think it's PALT, not PALT. I'm going to go with PALT, the Procurement Administrative Lead Time. All right, so this report from GAO is talking about what does the data show about how long this process takes, and what is DoD doing to manage this process. And they focused on 4 DoD components to look at this data. They looked at the Army, they looked at the Navy, they looked at the Air Force, and they looked at the Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA. So if you're listening to this and you're a defense subcontractor, this data is probably going to be relevant to you. So they analyze data from something known as the Federal Procurement Data System, the FPDS database, for all new orders and contracts awarded from FY19 through FY22. FPDS is also the database commonly used to estimate, you guessed it, the number of companies that will be affected by CMMC requirements. They also use another database called Electronic Data Access. Sometimes they use one, sometimes they use the other. Same data that we're using to estimate CMMC rollouts is the same data that GAO is looking at to see how long it takes to go from RFP to award. So we are right in line with the kind of data that we need to be looking at here. So they go on to say, when procuring goods and services, DoD contracting officers need to decide on a contracting approach. And they say there's really 3 broad approaches. I would recommend everybody read this part because they do a good explanation of these types of contracts and vehicles that you hear about whenever you come in contact with DoD acquisition stuff. They say we can do one of 3 things. We can award a new definitive contract. We can award a new indefinite delivery contract. We can issue an order under an existing indefinite delivery contract. Those are kind of the 3 buckets of awards that DoD is going to issue. And in addition to those 3 awards, contracting officers can choose from a number of contract types. The 2 most broad categories that everyone are going to fall under are cost reimbursement contracts and fixed price contracts. So if you are doing work for the Army, Navy, Air Force, or DLA on definitive contracts, indefinite delivery contracts, or orders under existing IDIQs that are either cost reimbursement or fixed price, this data is relevant to you. That means all of you, everyone listening to this data is relevant to you. They have a note here. They say time and materials and labor hours contracts make up less than 1% of all DoD awards above the simplified acquisition threshold of $2,000 or $250,000. So they don't even include them, right? They don't even include them. It's such a small number of these awards. So thanks for trimming that extra data for us, GAO. So that's what we're talking about here, setting the stage for the incredible numbers that come out of this analysis.
So I am no contracting expert, and this is one of those particular episodes where I kind of sit back as the student and try to learn as much as possible. But to make sure that I'm tracking and I'm in line with what the data that we're about to receive is, this essentially is data that is an analysis of contracts. And when you look at the makeup of those contracts essentially impact the defense industrial base.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm tracking.
It's basically everything. It's basically everything that the DoD did on all these contract vehicles from 2019 to 2022. So very recent, very reliable, very pertinent data to everyone wondering, how much time do I have from RFP to award? Because I can bid on the RFP. I just have to have my cert before the award. It ain't 6 years. It ain't 6 months. Sometimes it's not even 6 weeks. Let's get into the findings. So the ultimate finding that they have at the top here, award lead times have decreased for DoD contracts in general, but have only increased for higher value competitive awards above $50 million. So like we talked about last week, in parallel to this saga of DFARS cybersecurity clauses, NIST requirements, CMMC rulemaking, and all this stuff, there has been a parallel effort, DoD is a big organization, to decrease the amount of time that it takes to go from solicitation to award. This has gotten the attention of Congress. This has gotten the attention of the DoD-wide enterprise. Their goal is to award contracts as fast as possible, to automate that process, to take out as many barriers as you can imagine to the delay between issuing an RFP and issuing an award, which is bad news if you're waiting until the RFP comes out to start your implementation, to start scheduling your assessment, to hope that you're going to make it, because most people take months and months and months to go from average to assessment ready, and most awards don't take months and months and months to go from RFP to award. So here we go. DoD-wide median PALT times decreased by more than 20% from 41 days in FY19 to 32 days in FY22. The median value of the time it takes to go from RFP to award, DoD-wide, is a month, 32 days. So if you wait for that RFP to come out, you cannot start your implementation at that point and finish in a month. You can't start your implementation and get certified. It's not enough time. You necessarily need to start that stuff beforehand, just off of, before we get into the specifics, just off the median value for PALT award times. We keep going here. Here's some more. In 2022, the most recent data, 71% of DoD awards were what is known as competed, meaning they took different bids on them, and had a median PALT of 31 days. 71% had 31 days from solicitation to award, which is down from 42 days in 2019. The award lead times for contracts valued under $250,000, the simplified acquisition threshold, are so fast that they don't even include the data in the report. DLA awards orders under that threshold in less than a day because they have automated that process. And if you will recall, CMMC requirements apply below the simplified acquisition threshold. Anything above $10,000, CMMC requirements will apply. They are so fast in terms of awarding things that are below $250,000 that they don't even require the components to report them into the system.
Wait. So I was kind of fascinated when you said it went from 40 days to 31 days. I was fascinated when it was 40.
That's incredible.
42 days.
They took off 10 days, 11 days in a matter of a couple of years. That's a lot.
Okay. So, but you're telling me that inside of this report is tracked, or it is not tracked. They do not track what a majority of the contracts that will be impacted by CMMC will be.
It is so fast to award orders under $250,000, they don't even bother to track it. They don't even bother. Okay. So let's talk about median PALT times by contracting approach, DoD-wide, and then by component. Okay, DoD-wide PALT. How much of awards DoD-wide were orders on existing IDIQs? How many of them were definitive contracts? Things like that. And then how long did those contracting approaches take? So DoD-wide, 78% of awards are orders, and the median value is just 21 days. 3 weeks. 3 weeks from RFP to award. 12% were definitive contracts, and they took 97 days. And only 10% of DoD-wide awards were indefinite delivery contracts. They took 179 days. Only 10% of DoD awards are longer than the POAM closeout period for CMMC. And even then, with massive IDIQ contracts, it's only like an extra 2 weeks.
And that's
from solicitation to we have chosen.
And that includes the statistics of the instantaneous, the 251 that are below the acquisition threshold, right? That includes that stat.
Yep.
So 80%.
80% of people will get an RFP that will be awarded in 3 weeks.
So the funniest thing is that 78% is the implementation, or 78% is the amount of awards that are under 21 days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 78% of those are within 21 days. 22% of the people that have to have the things to get awarded those contracts actually have the things, right? Then, playing back or calling back to the fact that the widespread thought is that about 22 to 24% of the DIB have correctly implemented the requirements that would allow them to get this, right?
Weird, right?
So, yeah, so it all adds up to 100. It's one of those little things where the number always adds up to like,
but
that's 7.
That's enterprise-wide. We're adding numbers. You can juice up numbers to say whatever you want. So let's look at component by component, by the Army, by the Navy, by the Air Force, by DLA. For the Army, 68% of their awards were orders. They only took 49 days. 21% were definitive delivery contracts, 70 days. 11% were indefinite delivery, 178 days. So unless you are taking direct award of an indefinite delivery contract, and you get 180 days, maybe, to go from RFP to award, which is still only 6 months, maybe. We're talking 49 to 70 days if you're dealing with Army orders here.
So if we're talking about the amount of numbers of contracts in the first year of the program that we're going to be released, if you look at it, you're talking about 51 contracts possibly will take as long as the rest of them are within the calendar month of you.
They might even be within a month.
Within a day.
Let's talk about the Navy. Navy Gold Coast is going on as we're having this conversation. 79% of Navy orders, 79% of Navy awards were orders, and they only took 50 days. And then the numbers match up basically DoD-wide. 11% were definitive contracts, 132 days. 10% were indefinite delivery contracts, 185 days. The biggest, most complicated awards in indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, all those things are 180 days from RFP to award. If somebody went 180 days from not knowing anything about CMMC and 800-171 and 7012 to fully certified, you deserve a medal, because that is very unusual for somebody to be able to do that for all these people who have said, we're going to wait until it shows up in the RFP.
So enterprise-wide, and now this is probably going to lead into a bigger question and open up a bigger wormhole, but in enterprise-wide, you said that the average time of implementation for orders was 21 days, right? But for Army, you said 49 days. For Navy, and the enterprise-wide should be accumulation of those. For Navy, it's 50 days. Air Force is 38 days. So how do we get down to 21 days?
Because the Defense Logistics Agency is so fast at awarding their orders, they measure it at less than a day. Because apparently they have automated their system of awarding orders.
Wait a minute.
So 84% of awards from the DLA were orders, and the median value was less than 24 hours to go from RFP to award.
So what percentage of what the DIB business is done through DLA?
A lot. So
it's a good number.
Here's what we're saying, right?
It's a good number. A lot.
There is no situation under any of the type of awards and contract approaches, DoD-wide or by component, that takes longer than 6 months from RFP to award. Nope. 75 to 85% of those awards take less than 2 months. Doesn't matter who you're contracting with or what you're contracting for.
And the substantial portion of them, when you submit your bid, you'll be rewarded within a day.
Instantly.
So you will have to prove that you
as
have
a condition of award, which means you have to have it before the RFP comes out.
That's crazy.
Let's
now,
talk.
In the case of that, with the automation ones where they're expected to be that quick, do you think that it would be a case of where, like in your capability statements and stuff like that for your award, that you would just automatically upload that? People will probably do that anyway. I have a feeling
that if you have your CMMC cert proved in the system and they've automated it, people are going to get a lot of automatic approvals. And people who don't have it in the system are going to have to do a lot of phone calls saying, no, hold on.
Again, this isn't speculation. This is GAO's reporting.
These are GAO's numbers for how long it takes, components, DoD-wide, by different values, by different vehicles, by different approaches, to go from RFP to award. And there is no finding in here that shows that it takes more than a few months at the longest. Sometimes it takes a few weeks. Sometimes it takes a day.
That's
for
crazy.
An overwhelming majority
That's
of
insane.
these RFPs, which I just cannot stress this enough. You cannot wait until the RFP comes out to get started from scratch. There isn't enough time. Okay, let's talk about median PALT values by total contract value rather than talking about it by contracting approach.
Okay.
So GAO says, this is figure 6 in the report for those of you following along at home, over 85% of all definitive contracts awarded were below $10 million and had a median PALT of 90 days. 90 days. If you just take the middle number, 85% of them were under 10 million, not a lot of money, and it was 90 days. Half the time that they give you to close out a POAM. So going from RFP to award in 90 days, going from 0 to certified in 90 days, not going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's why everybody's lining up for joint surveillance assessments. And that's why all the C3PAOs are booked out for months right now as we're speaking, because they know there's not enough time to go from solicitation to award if you start at the solicitation day, right? This is exactly why our colleague Daniel Akridge says you can't be on time. You either have to be early or you're going to be late.
Well, now, if we think about it, in the timelines that we have evidence to support, literally are longer than now with the 48 CFR rule and the process that it is, and our anticipation that it's going to go extremely fast. And with 32 CFR being in the final stages of coming to life, realistically, you're less than a year from having to prove that you have to have CMMC.
You're less than a year from all of your competitors getting awarded stuff because there's only a matter of days or weeks.
Because they can prove it, yeah.
And that 85% is 85% of definitive contracts, right? Had a median PALT of 90 days and a value of 10 million or less. But remember, that's only like 10% of what gets awarded DoD-wide. It's only like 10% of what the components award. What they mostly award are orders, right? 75, 80% of their awards are orders, right? And they say over 90% of all orders were under $10 million and had a median PALT of 18 days. 18 days. 2 weeks. You got 2 Fridays and a Wednesday to go from, oh God, we need CMMC level 2 certification, submit the bid. Well, we don't have it.
Some companies work longer on the bids and it takes for them to be approved.
Some companies probably take more than 18 days to call you back because the C3PAOs are going to be so busy.
I agree.
So they go on here. The average total contract value of fixed price orders DoD-wide, $3.4 million. PALT, 15 days. The average total contract value of cost reimbursement orders, $11.2 million, with a PALT of 65 days. The average total contract value of fixed price definitive contracts, $14.2 million, median PALT 77 days, and an average total contract value for cost reimbursable definitive contracts, the Holy Grail, $24.1 million with a median PALT of 209 days. So even if you have a $25 million cost reimbursable definitive contract, which if you're listening to this podcast, you probably don't. You only got 200 days to go from RFP to award, from 0 to certified.
And carries the one that is less than 12 months.
And when the DoD says you had an extra 1,500 days to get ready for this because we took an extra 1,500 days to do another rule to reinforce the policy of what was going to be required. I don't know how to, DoD speaking here, they don't know how to tell you that if you waited till the last 200 days, the last 77, 65, the last 18 days before it gets awarded, they can't help you. Okay, this is for everything. This is for everything the DoD does. This is for everything the components do. They even go in and say for defense-centric components, they include the days here. So even on the conservative side, these are defense-centric components, and they say they often have longer median values, but not by much. For electronic and communications equipment orders, 45 days. For aircraft, ships, submarines, and land vehicles, 90 days. For weapons and ammunition, 120 days. For even the longest research and development contracts on defense-centric components, 120 days. Not a single category is as long or longer than the POAM closeout window for CMMC. And if everybody says that 180 days is not a lot of time, then we're talking significantly shorter periods of time for you to do the entire thing, not just your POAM.
So I want to play the other side of the fence for a second and ask you a question of, usually companies that are getting to the point, maybe they're working on the proposal, they may not have the certification in place, and they still may think it's plausible to submit the proposal. But usually when it comes down to that last ditch effort, that last second push of what needs to be done, and they're crossing the T's and dotting the I's at the end, right before they submit the proposal, right? Wouldn't that stop the people that don't have the certification and know that because they should have knowledge that this is the average PALT time for this particular type of contract, right? Mm-hmm. And so if they think that they're not going to be able to perform the cybersecurity portion that's required of that contract, do you think they would still submit? And is there going to be a lot of cases where people are just going to not submit, or they're going to submit and there's going to be a lot of rejection is basically what I'm trying to get at. Do you think people still have, pardon my language, the balls? You know what I mean? Just see, can I sneak this past?
I mean, submit the bid and see what happens, I guess. But as we talked about in the episode last week, as you can read for yourself in the language of both rules, it's a condition of contract award. That is what the contract officers, that's what the policy says. It's a condition of contract award. And so in order for them to go from RFP to award, this is a condition for them to give it to you. And if it only takes 18 days, then if you wait until the RFP to get started, you better be able to get done in 18 days. And I would hope that if you've listened to this show for any period of time, you will know that that is not a realistic thing to expect to do. It's just saying you have to be done before you bid on the contract. If for no other reason than just from a theoretical standpoint, you necessarily have to have the certification done before you ever get the data, because you have to prove that you could protect the data before they'll let you have it, right? So you already have to do it before you do the work. Here, you have to do it before you even know what you're going to be bidding on. Everybody knows what the requirements are. It doesn't really matter what the data is. And this is why, as we've said over and over again, the primes have been collecting questionnaires, collecting attestations, collecting statements from their supply chain saying, you're ready, right? You're ready to go, right? We're going to be bidding on stuff in 2025. And before we can take award, this is a condition for us. We have to make sure our supply chain is good to go. So this is a question that people should be asking themselves at home. What kind of contracts will you and or your customers be bidding on starting in 2025? Because if it's any of these categories of contracts, which it probably is, you don't have any time. You don't have any time. You might already be too late.
I would agree. I would think that if you are even or remotely going to bid on any one of these categories and you have not, I feel like it would take 18 days just for me to get all the ducks in a row, even if I had my implementations down and then I'm fully done, just to make sure that assessment preparation, we're spending a couple weeks making sure changes are in order, all the T's and I's are crossed.
18 days, your assessment is going to take 3 to 5.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I do the math. Do the math.
You have to have the certification in hand before you even contemplate the contract, regardless of what clauses in there.
And like we said, there's going to be 100, 150 or more companies that have it in hand because they went and did their JSVA. And then as soon as the final rule is done in Q1 of 2025 and assessments can start, C3PAOs are booked solid for months with companies that want to be at the head of the line that haven't done JSVAs. So you're going to have 200, 300, who knows how many by halfway through the year when the clause phased rollout begins of people who are ready to go. And if you would like to see a summary of this data, I would recommend that people look at Figure 12 in this report, where it plots out all of the data for all of the components by contract type, by contract value, so on and so forth, in one nice, easy, terrifying dashboard, depending on who you are, or delightful single pane of glass if you're ready to go. People who are ready to go are going to be doing backflips when they hear this. And people who are not ready, you should call somebody. You should definitely call somebody because you have a serious situation on your hands.
I'm going to drop off of this show the way that the DLA statistics drop off for contract award times.
They don't even track them. They're so fast they don't even track them. It was incredible. It was incredible. This has all been happening in parallel, which I didn't know about until I read this report. But don't take our word for it. Go read GAO's analysis. it's right there for everybody to check out. You don't have any time if you wait until the RFP. End of story. You got to get started way beforehand, like before you even listen to this episode, hopefully.
Yep.
So see you next week.
See you next week.
Were you one of the campers who did not make it to Secure the Dib Summer Camp 2024? That's okay. We still have the sessions available for on demand. You can register at securethedib.us and get the slides, recordings, access to everything you need. You can also reach out to our team and then fill out the CMMC Pathfinder tool as well. So if you need access to those recordings, just register at securethedib.us. You can also find it on the Summit 7 website, and we appreciate you stopping by.